So I'm delighted to be joined by District Governor Chris Casella and past District Governor Eloy Nunez. Now they're going to tell us a little more about themselves, and they're going to tell us about this amazing, much needed project called the 30-Second Project. So why don't we start first with you, DG Casella? Tell us a little about yourself, where you are in your district.
Well, thank you, Allison. Our district is it's Southwest Florida. We run from Pinellas, Pasco, Citrus and Hernando counties on the west coast of Florida. So if you ever vacation in Clearwater or St. Pete Beach, that's our district. Been with Rotary now for 8 years, and I'm currently the district governor for Rotary District 6950. And I'm a retired New York City police officer. So this has a very big meaning for me. And Eloy will go through, Dr. Eloy Nunez will go through all of the slides here and show you about the project.
Thank you. So Eloy, over to you.
And so thank you for inviting us. And I asked Governor Chris to sit in on this because it was his phone call that started the whole thing about 4 years ago, actually. So it's a progress. It's a project that's in progress. So thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about it. So let me advance the slide. And there is a picture of Governor Chris when he was a young, good-looking guy on the left, and my good friend Rick Walker, who passed away last year from a massive heart attack. They both called me on the same day. It was around July of 2020. And you can remember that year was when COVID and everybody's stuck in their houses and Rotary meetings got canceled. Everything's over Zoom, and Zoom saved us. And I have nothing against Zoom. In fact, we're using it right now. However, there's a sense of foreboding, and everybody's not feeling good. And then in addition to that, things started going really bad. So I got a phone call the same day, within 30 seconds, first from Governor Chris Casella, and then from my good friend Rick Walker. And what they were calling about was the so-called Summer of Love in 2020, where many riots broke out throughout the entire United States. Horrible time, but you can see there the statistics: 8,700 protests in 68 cities. There were at first there were 19 fatalities, but by the time we got to October, 25 people had passed away violently because of these riots. You can see I highlighted 2,037 police officers were injured in the line of duty. Not to mention, and the one you can see on the screen was an officer who got shot in the neck, is now a quadriplegic. All this happened as a result of the George Floyd arrest and death, which the 4 officers ended up going to jail for. It was just a really hard time. Add that to COVID, and we're seeing the police being maligned, disrespected. We're seeing innocent people dying. And as retired police officers and firemen, that's really difficult for us. So I got a call from Governor Chris before he was governor and asked me, what can we do? What can we do as Rotarians? And my answer to him was, I don't know. I don't know what to do. So I said, why don't we just get a Zoom call? Because that's what we did about everything, do a Zoom, and invite all the police officers. He says, yeah, that's a great idea. So we did. As soon as I hung up from Chris, I get another call from a fireman, Rick Walker, my good friend. And he says, Governor, what can we do? What can we as Rotarians do? He's a retired fireman. I said, Chris, it's weird that you call me because I'm sorry, Rick. I said, I'm sorry that you called me. Chris just finished calling me a minute ago and he asked me the same question. I don't know what to do. In any regard, we had two. I asked our governor at the time, Alan Collins, if we could do some video Zoom calls, and we did. We had 2 calls, meetings, and we invited every retired officer and active officer and fireman who was in our district at the time as Rotarians. And we just talked about things and what was causing the problems, and we commiserated, but nothing really happened out of it. No solutions. We were all lost as to what to do. So fast forward 8 months later, we came up as I was my good friend, who was also a Rotary Club president of the Pinellas Central Pinellas Rotary Club. Mike Flynn was a captain with the Tampa Police Department. He and his wife Yvette retired on the same day. Very happy occasion. My wife and I went down to Tampa and were part of the ceremony. It was great to see that they made it out alive. All the years that they worked, well, 30 years in the police department. Sadly, about 8 months later, he passed away from a massive heart attack. It was one of those shocks that got to my soul. Uh, it was horrible. And I first heard about it. We were vacationing in Virginia at the time. There was nothing we could do. But a month later, my wife and I were invited to his celebration of life. Tampa's an hour and a half from where we live, so we drove down there in total silence. We didn't even talk to each other, no music, nothing on the radio. We were so down and out. All the things that are happening now are one of our closest friends had passed away unexpectedly. When we got there, we saw his family, saw Yvette's family, saw his police family, and our spirits were uplifted. And it was a really good event. So as we're driving back home from there, all of a sudden my brain started working again. And this is where the idea hatched. And the idea, my wife and I were just talking, and there's something about bringing people together that I think sparks creativity, because that's exactly what happened in this case. Because before we're just talking about what was causing the problems, but on that 1.5 hour drive back to our home, after being welcomed by his family and feeling good about it, all these ideas started streaming so fast into our heads that as soon as I got home, I started writing them down real quick before I went to sleep. Basically, we know that we tried to get to the root of the problem. What's causing these situations in the first place? Typically, it happens in the first 30 seconds of police officers stopping an individual, a citizen, whether it's a traffic stop or whatever. Now, not all stops are going to be pleasant, because that's the nature of police work. Chris will attest to that. But we're trying to minimize and try to uh, address the routine situation where a policeman stops an individual. And we know for a fact, one of the barriers that we encounter is that some people resist police officers inherently because of their culture, backgrounds, their experiences. There's mistrust and fear of the police. So how do we get around it? How do we get around it? So my wife and I started talking. We said, why don't we match a police officer with somebody who's trusted, a role model, like a football player, American football, but it could be hockey, it could be baseball, it could either be European soccer or football, is what we call soccer. The bottom line is that by doing that symbolically, even before those two enter the classroom at the high school level, is what we're focusing on. Symbolically, they're already saying, we are friends, we are together. It's almost a substitute for the both parents. It's sadly, not everybody has two parents. Not everybody has one parent. And those that do have a parent or two sometimes don't listen to them. So that's what the gap that we're trying to fill in. It's unique in that sense, is that we're matching a police officer with an athlete. 2 days later, I called Yvette Flynn and I said, I want to name this project in honor of you and Mike. And that's a picture of them on the day they retired together. So we did, and called it the First 30 Seconds Project, and that's where the whole thing started. It's about saving lives and livelihoods by seeking ways to de-escalate potential conflict between the police and non-police persons during their initial encounter. It's very small, very focused on those first 30 seconds. We know that we're not going to solve all the world's problems. It'd be foolish. But it's been my experience that if you try to solve everything, you solve nothing. So try to do something. And this is that flashpoint is where the stop starts. It could go well or it could not go well. So that is our intent, focusing on that. As a result of that, we just started talking to different Rotarians and non-Rotarians. This has been going on for 3 years of slowly building. Last year, we finally became an corporation, a nonprofit, and there's our board of directors, some very accomplished individuals. Most of them are Rotarians, but there are 2 non-Rotarians. There's judges, firemen, police officers, university people, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the people that guide the program. This is our stakeholder map, our many affiliates as we're building around them. This is our geographic footprint. As Chris mentioned, it's the West Florida side. And we already have many police departments that have agreed and signed on, and others that we're in active conversation. We're also incorporating the school districts to be part. They will be our consumers, our end consumers. It's important to talk about what the project is and what it's not. As I mentioned, it focuses on the first 30 seconds. It's not judgmental. And you notice I highlighted it's not partisan or political. That is the death knell of every project. And especially in Rotary, as you know very well, we try to avoid politics as much as possible. We all have our individual political inclinations. We understand that, but we need to be focused and not lose focus by being derailed by that. I've seen that in some Rotary clubs, sadly, become a real hindrance, and we're not going to allow that to happen. It's not about blaming the police or the individual. It's not judgmental, and so on. So that's our intent, and we, as the board of directors, we got to make absolutely sure. As I've been going around to all the Rotary clubs, all these other organizations, I emphasize on that. Initially, we targeted, we're looking at middle school age students, but as we put this idea out to the public and to our consumers, they suggested that we focus on high school students, specifically on driver's education classes. It was one idea. One of the really cool things about this whole process is that we've talked to hundreds of people. We've had brainstorming. We have focus groups. And every step of the way, we're hearing ideas from a lot of people. And that's what's neat. It's not one person. It's a whole bunch. Literally, it's up to hundreds of people right now that are involved in this. So one of the things I want to incorporate is a simple lesson that I learned in 1983 or 82 when I first became a policeman. They sent me to officer training school of one of the many schools that I attended. This is what kept me alive for 26 years when I was a police officer. And one of the things I said is simple paradigm of alertness. Red, yellow, and green. It's like a traffic light. And what we're trying to focus on is to keep both the police officer in the yellow, it's a calm alert, and also the person getting stopped in that same state of mind, alertness. Because if they go in the red state of alertness, then there's panic, there's flight, there's fight, whatever. Here's a diagram of what could happen in that critical point where there's a traffic stop, where the police officer meets the individual. It could go really bad and escalate into the red, or ideally, it'll stay in that yellow alert and both sides are good. You may recall, if you're familiar with psychology, this is a very pop psychology from the 60s and 70s. It was called transactional analysis. And it's not Sigmund Freud or even Carl Jung of that complexity. It's a very simple thing, but for this case, it's the perfect theoretical framework to use. An example of a parent-adult-child transaction. In the left is a traditional officer-friendly model where a policeman goes into the classroom and dictates and starts saying, you got to do this, you can't do this, and that. It's a very paternalistic transaction. When a traffic stop, the mere fact that you're doing a stop on an individual, that's parent to child. The person that gets stopped feels like a child. I don't know if you've ever been stopped by the police, Allison, but it's not a pleasant experience. And I would say that it's not a pleasant experience for the person who gets stopped, but also for the police officer, because there's all kinds of danger involved in every traffic stop. You never know what could happen. So you, as an officer, you want to stay calm and you want to do a business transaction, adult to adult. If you look on the right side, both parties are in the yellow alert, but not panicking, and it's an adult to adult transaction. So that's the ideal that we're striving for, is that transaction. We've talked to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with one of the football players who's retired just today, this morning, and we're working on establishing that relationship with professional or even college football teams, baseball team, hockey, because that's an integral part of this binary thing where two people go into the classroom. They already do it. The police already do it. What we're trying to do is match them up together so they do it together. Very basically, it's a 4-step thing. In day one, before they even the athlete and the police officer even talk, they need to be well dressed. They need to walk in like they own the place, like they're together, like they're friends, etc. That initial imprint is what matters the most. That symbolism, the power of imagery. The second step, we go through storytelling. We encourage each of those two to tell their real life stories, as long as it fits within parameters. We don't want them going off the conversation. As a matter of fact, we'll have a third person as part of the team ensuring that happens and keeping notes and feedback for later for learning. And then they're going to do what to do and what not to do. That's step 2. Step 3 is they'll do role playing, actual scenarios in the classroom of what a traffic stop should not be and how it should be. We want to leave them with a positive as the last thing. And then we'll give them a little wristband or whatever, the kids, to remember what we're for. And then we come up a week or 2 later, depending on the school district that how they want to do it, and we do a follow-up visit and go through with it. So we call this the business model. It's based on mutual respect. Again, it's adult to adult transaction. Both parties understand each other's positions, and we try to eliminate as much as possible that uncertainty. So that's what causes the problem, is the uncertainty, almost always. So San Leo University, where we live here in this area, has been really, really good. We've established a great rapport with them. I taught there for 15 years as an associate professor. I retired 2 years ago, but I'm still there in a weird way. I can't leave this place. But I'm so glad that they have been everything that I've asked. They have been outstanding. And by the way, Allison, I want to mention, and Chris hasn't heard this before because it's just happening. One of the people in the staff at San Leo University heard me speak about the Peace Universities, and she's going to apply for that. And I was so happy, and she is so qualified. And you'll be hearing more about that perhaps at a later time. So I'm happy about that. I always believe that when you talk in front of a group, you never know who's in that audience, and you're never going to know how you're going to affect people. And this is a perfect example. She's been part of this project, and when I told her about these Peace Universities, and she wants to put in for a scholarship. So I thought that was one of those unintended benefits that has come out of this whole thing. So a timeline, starting April 2nd is when we're going to train the trainers, the actual police officers and the athletes, on how to comport themselves. It's a 4-week program. The first week and the 4th week are in class. Weeks 2 and 3 are online. So that's where we're at. And then the university gave us their incoming class of freshmen as our first guinea pigs, where we're going to try this on a pilot basis for 150 of them and work out any kinks that may arise. So that's our timeline. We're in the process of registering. This is a workshop that we had, and you see the governor there and some others. In 2022 is one of the brainstorming sessions where all these ideas came together, and we hashed out the good and the bad ideas. And there's one that preceded all this in 2016. Again, the university brought all these police officers together from various jurisdictions. These are lieutenants and captains and sergeants who now have gone up in rank, and now we're talking about the chiefs of police, etc. Many of whom were my students in the doctoral program. So it's quite a good thing that we're seeing. The 2 young ladies in the bottom were 4 Interact students that were part of it too. And that was an unintended benefit that we got, and that they got to talk, and the officers turned to them and asked them questions. Anyways, as we end everything, in every meeting that I've ever been to, in all the Rotary clubs that I've attended, we end with a four-way test. So everything we do will correspond to one of the four tenets. And you see our mission statement: is it fair to all concerned? And you see, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And obviously, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And we're hoping to reestablish as a residual benefit of this whole thing. Yes, the students are our goal, but we also want to establish friendships between the police and the athletes also. These are friendships that we hope will last forever. So thank you for your attention. And that's what we do. So 4 years ago, when Chris called me up and says, "What do we do?" I said, "I had no idea what to do." Well, now we have an idea because we've been listening to about 100 different people and their ideas. And that's what we do. That's what we do. And even after you retire, you serve forever. So I am thankful for Rotary, and I'm thankful to you to giving us this opportunity. Chris,
Thank
you
you.
want to add anything?
No, it's perfect. And the whole premise of bringing an athlete in is a lot of students look up to these athletes. They don't necessarily look up to police officers.
Yeah.
So when a police officer goes into a school, especially in high school, they've already gotten a bad rap. So when they partner with a well-known athlete or an athlete in general, they can lend each other credibility. So I think that's the whole premise of this, and impacting one or two people at a time over a lifetime, that can make a huge difference in people's lives. So that's you've done a great job, and you explained it very well, and I thank you again, and I'm glad I made that phone call.
I'm glad you did too.